Hey guys, if you watched my last video, you know that I screwed up putting the motor together for the Budget Nova, and then I actually put two pistons in backwards, and it had a bunch of slapping. Now I didn't know, I thought it was piston slap, didn't know what it was for sure until I took the motor apart and found the pistons in backwards. Well, I screwed up, whatever. Now, I've got it back together, I've got it back in the car, I've got a few things to do to finish it where I can crank it up, and I'm about 99% sure that was 100% of the problem. So we're gonna get this thing put back together all the way, cranked up, and hopefully it won't make any noise. All right, the engine is back in the car. I've got a few things to do before we can start it up. Okay, so I've got everything on the front end on. My fuel pump is in. I've got to put the starter on, wire it up, put the header on this side. Header is on this side. I've got to hook the exhaust up to both carburetor, distributor, couple of wires, plug wires, and we should be able to crank this thing up after I stick a battery in it. And then we'll make sure. So let's get started. All right, so I finished up getting this thing done last night. It was a little bit too late to crank it up. I do want to rev this thing up when I crank it up because I had the rings out of their bores. Even though I kept them in the bore they were in, I'm still worried about them seating in those two bores. So hopefully we won't have any issues with that. Pretty much everything is the same except for I've got the power steering belt on the pump this time, and I've got some transmission fluid in the pump. Now, these with this type of gearbox, they use transmission fluid in the power steering, not power steering fluid like you would use in a rack and pinion. Pretty much everything else is done. There's no water in it because I'll put water in. I want to fire it up real quick first, just for a few seconds, and then I'll put water in it, make sure I don't have any leaks. I'm 99% sure that the pistons were 100% of the problem, but just to be sure, I'm not putting water in it yet, so I don't have to make another mess, even though I should have just used a bucket, whatever. All right. Put my ground cable up. See if I've got any, yep, got a little bit of fuel left in the carburetor. Fuel line is tight. I've got oil in it, transmission fluid, all that's good. So let's see if it'll crank up. Hopefully the timing is where it needs to be. All right, let's see if it'll crank up. All right, so it cranked up. Starter did make a little noise. It kicked back on the starter. I'm not sure why. Maybe the timing set too high. I'm gonna jump under there and make sure the starter is tight because that sounded kind of weird. And then I'm gonna put some water in it and then warm it up and make sure I don't hear any noise. Starter's not loose, not sure what's going on there. I turned the timing down some. I've got water in it now, so let's crank it up again. Okay, so I did hear a little bit of a noise when I fired this thing up, and I found it. that rocker's loose. So I'm gonna tighten that up, readjust it, and should be good to go, I hope. All right, so I'm not sure if you can hear it or not, but it's not making the noise anymore. Much better. All right, so the motor's not making a noise anymore. I couldn't be happier about that. Jeff, the guy's buying the car, has been extremely patient with me, and I am forever grateful because I was kind of worried about that when it started making noise. I knew I was going to have to pull the motor back out, but it's not making noise now. Everything's great. Now, I still need to tune the car. I've got to set the timing, adjust the carburetor, some stuff like that, and then we're going to do a little road trip with it. Before I go on a road trip, I've got to get the front windshield in this car. I've got to get the rear glass in it. I've got to change the springs on the front because they are way too short. It's way too low, and there's no travel left in the suspension. So I've got some brand new springs I'm gonna put in there, and it'll keep the stance, so it'll still look good, but it'll be a lot better situation. Once we get all that stuff done, we're gonna do a little short test drive, road trip, you know, not too far, nothing too crazy, but definitely something to make sure that the car is okay. Now, once we get that done, you know, we're going to jump onto another build. Now, I'm still working on the 4-door to 2-door conversion back here behind me. That's coming along pretty good. It doesn't look like I've done much, but I've been working on the 2-door section of the car, some out in the yard. And once I get that done, you know, well, that car's going to be, that's going to be a long-term project. But anyway, I've got a retro build coming up. We're going to do that 72 2-door. That's going to be pretty cool. We'll see you guys next time.